Birthday wishes on your wall?
You can come on up. You seated?
Ms. Martin, when we broke, I think I've been asking you questions about your findings and conclusions back in 2006. And I want to ask you, just go back, and your first letter to King County with regard to the exclusion of David Pietz's fingerprint, comparing it to the fingerprint on the shift knob. That letter was on July 11th, I believe, 2006.
That's correct.
And do you recall approximately August, I believe it was 2nd, 2006, you had a meeting with King County Sheriff's detectives? And actually August 9th, 2006, at 10 a.m., that there was a meeting?
I did have a meeting. I couldn't tell you the exact date.
Can you tell me, it was in 2006 though, right?
Yes.
And it was after you offered the opinions with regard to these fingerprints, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And that meeting was with King County fingerprint examiners?
I recognized one examiner and one manager, and then there was a detective and a couple other people there.
Okay. And do you recall who the King County fingerprint examiner was there?
It was Juan Boone Park,
Okay. And who was the manager?
Marilyn Nault.
And did that meeting have anything to do with your opinion back then that David Pietz's fingerprint could be excluded from the gear shift knob fingerprint?
Yes.
Okay. And you stuck to your opinion then, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what a fingerprint examiner should do if that's the way you feel, right?
If it's based upon my observations, and yes, that was my opinion.
Okay, well, I'm a little bit confused now. You said that back in 2006, you didn't have, I don't know what you called it, but there weren't like meetings between the fingerprint examiners to discuss fingerprint findings. Is that what you're saying?
We didn't really have policies and procedures or an avenue for a consultation.
But the person that referred this case to you in your own office was Mr. Berg, is that right?
That's correct.
And is he a fingerprint person?
He was a supervisor, and he did do latent print work.
Okay. Were there any other fingerprint people in the Tacoma Police Department? By that I mean people that did latent prints like yourself back in 2006.
In 2006, I was had just promoted to a full-time latent print examiner. The other personnel who worked latent fingerprints were also assigned to the field.
Now, you said you were promoted to a full-time fingerprint examiner. By that you mean you were no longer doing the field work, going out and collecting fingerprints.
That's correct.
But in terms of your abilities and skills and duties, prior to then you were, not full-time, but you were a fingerprint examiner with Tacoma. It wasn't like you were somehow a junior fingerprint examiner.
My title was forensic specialist, and doing latent fingerprint work was included in my duties.
Okay, and the change was you went from doing that, was it half-time or three-quarters time to full-time?
Yeah, probably not even, probably maybe a quarter of the time, and then went to a full-time position.
Okay, and Mr. Berg would not have assigned this case to you unless he felt that you were quite competent to do this work. Is that a fair statement?
Sustained.
Well, there were other people in your department that Mr. Berg could have referred this to, or he could have done it himself if he wanted to, right?
I suppose he could.
Okay. So, in terms of your department back in 2006, if you had any questions prior to reaching an opinion, you could have talked to Mr. Berg about this?
That's really difficult to answer. I was assigned the full-time latent print examiner position. I'm also a certified latent print examiner. Eric Berg was not a certified latent print examiner.
So you're a step above him?
Technically, in the order of the chain of your chain of people, he was my supervisor. But as far as latent print expertise, I probably had more.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
There are people that do the same type of work for the Pierce County Sheriff's Office as you do.
There are some,
You probably know them, don't you?
yes.
And if you have a question, you could call them up on the phone and say, I want to bounce something off you. I want you to take a look at something.
Probably not.
Well, there are people, you're not the only, I mean, are you saying that you're like an island upon yourself, that you're the only one that can do these and you can't talk to anybody else, or you couldn't back in 2006?
Not at all, but when you refer to other people in the business, you do want people who are just as qualified or certified in order to do a consultation, if you will.
So you don't want to, you being a senior person, don't want to do a consultation 2013, or at least classification of fingerprints.
I didn't say the terminology or the classification of fingerprints had changed. Policies and procedures had changed over that period of time.
Okay, so, but back in 2006, there was a classification where you could say fingerprints were, the word you used was excludable, wasn't it? You could exclude the person?
You're talking about conclusions?
Yeah, you could say, I can exclude this person as leaving the fingerprint.
You now have three conclusions.
Well, I'm talking about 2006. Your opinion was that, at least as set forth in the letter, that David Pietz and Nicole Pietz can be excluded as a possible match, right?
Yes.
So that was one of the opinions you were allowed to give?
Yes.
Okay. Another one could be that David Pietz or Nicole Pietz could be confirmed as making the fingerprint. Is that the word you used?
Identified.
Identified. Okay, and then there was also one that the fingerprint was of no comparison value.
We didn't have that back then at Tacoma Police Department. We would go incomplete, and then maybe you could give a reason
Okay.
for that.
So you could say the fingerprint is incomplete, meaning I can't make it, I can't exclude, or I can't match.
Or the comparison process is based on.
Well, let me make it simple. Back in 2006, you had a classification called excluding, right?
That would be a conclusion.
A conclusion called excluding, right?
Correct.
In 2013, you have a classification called excluding.
We have a conclusion of exclusion.
Right, so
Still.
that hasn't changed between 2006 and 2013, has it?
No, as far as our department goes, that's
And just to
correct.
put into context fingerprints, and being a forensic, I want to call you a scientist, you had a different term for it?
Just practitioner.
Practitioner, okay. Forensic practitioner. Do you do any DNA work?
No, I do not.
When you were out collecting materials out of the crime scene, were you collecting DNA?
I was collecting. I
So
did
you
not
have-
analyze. The actual comparison and analysis hasn't changed. However, procedures probably have changed a lot. Actually.
Okay, so in-house procedures in different departments, right? May have changed, okay? Fair
Okay.
statement? Okay, so when I spoke with you at your,
No.
okay, now this morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, Miss Kristen Richardson told me that she had spoken to you and that now you're saying that instead of excluding these people, it's inconclusive.
I am standing by my opinion in the letters that I wrote and upon my observations.
Resolution, it's up to you. It's 2 against 1, so you have to agree with them. Is that what you're saying, the way it works now?
No, you have to show what you see. And I can, an ending ridge that shouldn't be there, and therefore I came up with the conclusion of exclusion based on that. However, when you have a consultation, you're showing other examiners what you're looking at, and that difference can be, I deem it as unexplainable. But sometimes when you have a consultation with other examiners, they see it and go, oh, maybe it is distortion, or they can explain it in their own terminology. It's not about changing your mind on your opinion. It's looking at the evidence and rendering your own observations.
So are you saying you had that consultation with other examiners between August 14, 2013, when I spoke with you, and this morning?
No, I've had no consultation with other latent print examiners on this case.
So you're speculating as to what they might say during a consultation and whether your mind would be changed. You're speculating on that.
I'm just saying, with current practices and policies and procedures, and given another examiner's eye and a possible explanation for the discrepancy that I see, there could have been a different outcome.
Well, okay, could have been. So you didn't have this consultation, so we don't know what other examiners would have said, and you don't know for sure whether even if they disagreed with you, maybe they would be like the people in Pierce County Sheriff's Office that didn't have as much experience as you did, or the same level of experience, so you would have stuck to it. So it's possible even after a consultation that didn't happen, you might still stick to that exclusion.
Under current practices, though, I still would have had to have it verified. I still would have had to have another examiner verify my conclusion.
Well, aren't you saying that you want to agree with the other, you're aware that there are some other examiners that say it's inconclusive that have viewed these prints? You're aware of that, aren't you?
I am aware of that.
Were you aware of that back in 2006?
I was aware, well, yes, because Juan Boone Park was there.
Okay, and he told you that? He told you that he had a, she told you?
We discussed no value for comparison purposes.
Okay. And you were aware of the other opinions. Obviously, you still remembered that when you talked to me on August 14th, 2013, yes?
In a letter, the original request from King County mentions another latent print examiner.
Okay. So somehow, being up in court this morning, that made you, I'm asking, did that make you want to then back off on your opinion so you wouldn't contradict these other print examiners that are testifying for the state?
I'm going to stand by my opinion based upon my observations that the two people I compared to were exclusions. However, practices as far as policies and procedures have changed that may have lent towards a different outcome.
Okay. Let's talk about what's different here. First, unlike DNA, assuming you can't make a match, okay?
Okay.
So in other words, you have a latent print and a known print. And there's something similar on the latent print to the known print, but you, based on your practice, you can't make a match. Okay, assume that, right?
Okay.
You can't come up, a fingerprint examiner, based on the current science, can't give an opinion that, well, even though I can't make a match, there's a 1 in 500 chance or a 1 in 1,000 chance that this fingerprint nevertheless belonged to the known person. You can't do that, can you?
We don't base our conclusions on statistical data at this point.
Unlike DNA.
Correct.
Okay. So it's either a match or no match,
Or inconclusive.
or excludable.
Well, no match means exclusion.
Okay, a match, no match, or inconclusive. Right.
Identification, exclusion, or inconclusive.
Okay. And in this case, you excluded because there was a clear difference between the latent print and the known print.
There was an unexplainable discrepancy, one discrepancy between the latent impression and the known impression.
And based on fingerprint practice as you know it, if there is one unexplained difference between the latent print and the known print, you have to exclude or say no match.
Correct.
And in this case, the unexplainable difference had to do with a ridge in the in the latent print that did not exist in the known print.
That's correct.
And you told me you counted 5 ridges in a certain area.
I accounted for 5 specific ridge details in what I put in an area that had that I did not note distortions or overlay or a double tap situation.
And you looked in the same area, the same relative area, in the known print. Is that right?
Correct.
And you couldn't find that same 5th ridge.
I couldn't find it, and I couldn't explain why it was there in the latent either.
And so, based on criteria, both in 2006 and 2013, it's your duty in that situation to say that there's no match.
That would be my opinion.
Okay? And that's true equally as much in 2006 as it is in 2013. Things haven't changed that way, have they?
Practices and policies and procedures have, but my opinion is still what it is,
And that is that there's no match.
that both pizzas were excluded.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
You may step down, see if you can be excused.
Yes.
All right, next witness.
Come forward, please. Raise your right hand. This matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Proceed. Give us your name, please.
My name is Casey Wertheim, spelled K-A-S-E-Y, and the last name is W-E-R-T-H-E-I-M. I live in Bridgeport, West Virginia.
What is your occupation?
I'm a consultant in the area of latent print examinations, and I'm also a contract employee with the Federal Bureau of Investigation on a criminal justice information sharing initiative.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, training, and work history?
Absolutely. I was employed by the Mississippi Crime Laboratory in 1997. I went through an intensive 2-year latent print examiner training program that was designed to give a very wide background in the area of latent print examination. Everything from 10-print examination to processing techniques to comparisons, all the way through to reporting and testimony in courts of law. After this training program, I was employed by the Mississippi Crime Laboratory for a total of 7 years, after which I took employment with Lockheed Martin, who had been contracted to design a fingerprint system for the Department of Defense. I worked for the Department of Defense in the capacity of the first examiner on that system, and I then hired other examiners and became the manager of the latent print examination team for the Department of Defense on that system. After this time, I also started my own business, my own company that did latent print contracting work on the side. I've managed 2 different research grants in the area of latent print examination, and I've also hired part-time examiners to work from home for my company, doing comparisons and examinations over the internet for these research grants and part-time work that I've made available to them. All of this, I still have my company today, and I still have part-time examiners that are really willing and able to do work for me, and I also keep that company open so that I can participate in latent print consultant cases such as this.
Have you trained people with regard to fingerprints?
Yes, I have trained people. I have conducted a 40-hour workshop on fingerprint examination, where latent print examiners will come to my workshop for the entire week, a 40-hour week, and do comparisons, very complex, difficult comparisons, as well as learn about aspects of the latent print discipline. I've conducted on the order of about 24 of these workshops throughout the United States and even in several other countries.
And have you worked for defense attorneys as well?
I have worked for defense attorneys as well, yes.
Did you receive a request as a consultant in 2006 to look at a photo of a print that had been taken from a gear shift in Nicole Pietz's car?
Yes, I did.
Okay. In that capacity, were you acting as an independent expert?
I was.
And what was your understanding of the issue when you received the photograph?
My understanding was that the issue was this was a non-standard type of latent print examination, meaning that there was very little to work with in the print. There had been some discrepancy or some non-standard aspect to prior latent print examinations regarding the impression, and they were looking for an outside consultant to come in and provide a conclusion on this latent print.
How do you define someone being excluded from a fingerprint? What does that mean to you?
Exclusion means that there is sufficient quality and quantity of dissimilar information between a latent print and a known print, between 2 fingerprints, to be able to say that they were definitely not made by the same person.
And were you aware of the findings that had been made by Tony Joe Martin or Wade Petroka or Cynthia Zeller when you received the print?
I don't believe that I was made aware of their conclusions specifically. I was just asked to conduct an examination of the latent print from the gear shift knob, along with the known fingerprints bearing the name Martin David Pietz, and arrive at my conclusions, and then report my conclusions back to the investigator in the case. I believe it was a Jesse Anderson.
Okay, so did you receive a photo of the print to review?
I did. If I recall correctly, I received a compact disc via FedEx, and that was on or about June 15th of 2006.
Okay, and that had the series of photographs on it taken by the photo lab, or the fingerprint lab?
That's correct. It was a series of different angles and lighting of the latent print on the gear shift knob, as well as photos of each of the known fingerprints on the fingerprint card bearing the name Martin David Pietz.
Okay, so you received the known prints as well to compare it to?
That's correct.
Okay, and what did you find?
I found that I was able to positively exclude, based on my definition before, 9 of the 10 fingerprints of Martin David Pietz. I was not able to exclude the right thumb fingerprint because it had a similar pattern, a large right sloping loop pattern. So you guys have heard the different pattern types of the fingers. The fingerprint pattern was similar enough, as well as the small group of detail within that pattern of the level 2 details, such as bifurcations and ridge endings. There was enough similarity present that I was not able to exclude the right thumbprint as having made the latent impression on the gear shift knob.
Can you tell us a little bit about distortion with regard to whether it could still be made by the same person, or when you're training people, what is your explanation of distortion of a picture or a print?
Okay? Distortion is basically, think of it in terms of things like smearing or pressure downward on the latent print. The fact is that no 2 fingerprints are ever exactly the same. There's always different pressures, different slippages, motion, sort of in a twisting nature. All of those different types of pressure create different latent prints. For the latent print in question, if you had smearing that perhaps looked like an actual ridge characteristic, an examiner could look at that and make the determination that this was an actual characteristic of the skin instead of distortion, and they could be confused as to whether they're looking at an exclusion versus an inconclusive determination. In other words, if an examiner thought that something looked like a characteristic, they might say it's not present in the known print and therefore exclude that impression as having been made by that source. So it can come down to a simple nature of looking at the detail in a print and simply making a slight misdetermination that it's a detail rather than distortion. So misinterpretation of distortion can have consequences in the criminal justice discipline because examiners...
Excuse me for just a minute. Sorry, I can't hear. Keep going.
Okay. So misdeterminations as to whether a particular characteristic is distortion versus an actual characteristic can have consequences in the criminal justice system because it may contribute to an erroneous exclusion.
So when you say that you could not exclude the right thumbprint, you're not saying that it is the right thumbprint, correct?
That's correct. There's not a sufficient quality or quantity of detail present between those 2 impressions, the latent print on the gear shift knob and the right thumbprint of Martin David Pietz. There's not a sufficient quality and quantity of detail for me to say for certain they were made by the same person. But there's no dissimilarities in the prints for me to say they weren't either.
Okay.
So my conclusion is inconclusive.
Okay, so that's my question. Did you see similarities from one to the other?
I did see similarities, but again, not a sufficient quality and quantity of similarity for me to arrive at the conclusion of individualization.
Okay. Are you able to articulate how many similarities, or is that how you approach it?
It was based on a quality and quantity, both in the impression. So it's not just a number of features that I was looking at. I was looking at the holistic nature of the latent print and the known print in question.
Okay. Okay. So hang on just a second. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Wertheim, you're not saying that the known print and the latent print were identical in this case, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, because if they were identical, you would have reached the conclusion that they were identifiable, that the print on the gear shift was identifiable.
In this particular case, it was my conclusion that the print does not contain a sufficient quality and quantity of detail to be identifiable to a known impression. There's not a sufficient quality and quantity of detail to be identifiable. It's comparable. In other words, most examiners would take this latent print and set it down next to a known print to conduct a comparison, but it's not identifiable such that you could say that this particular person left this latent print.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your definition of a comparable fingerprint.
Okay?
Your definition of a comparable fingerprint is a fingerprint that an examiner analyzes without reference to any other fingerprint and decides is of sufficient quality and quantity to place side by side with another impression for the purposes of reaching a conclusion.
That's
Is that correct?
Yes.
And does that sound like something that I read perhaps right out of your email report to Jesse Anderson?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So there are some prints that are not even worth setting down next to a known print. Is that true?
That's true, yes.
Because they're just not good enough to be able to make any kind of comparison.
That's correct.
But a comparable print is good enough. You do an independent analysis of it. You say, this is a good enough print. I'm going to put it down next to a known print, and I'm going to do an analysis.
Exactly. And in this particular case, it was because the latent print had a discernible pattern type of being a large right-sloping loop pattern and several characteristics within the print itself.
And so when you put it down next to the known print, then it's your turn to reach whatever conclusion you might reach.
Correct.
Okay. In this case, you were only asked to compare the latent print to the known fingerprint of David Pietz.
All 10 fingers, but the known fingerprints of David Pietz.
Sure, he was the only individual for whom you were provided known prints.
That's correct.
You weren't provided known prints for Nicole Pietz.
I was not.
You were not provided known prints for any other individuals.
No other individuals.
And your conclusion, after doing this analysis, was that it was inconclusive.
To the right thumbprint of David Pietz. That's correct.
To the right
It
thumbprint.
was conclusive to the other 9 fingers, that they were not made by those fingers.
Okay. The actual language you used was, my determination is inconclusive for the right thumb.
That's correct.
And the reason that you determined it was inconclusive is, again, this is using your language, there was insufficient detail in sequence to be individualized.
That's correct. There was an insufficient quality and quantity of detail between the between the latent print on the gear shift knob and the right thumbprint of Martin David Pietz for me to say that they were conclusively made by the same finger.
And the definition, your own definition of inconclusive is a comparison that results in neither an exclusion nor an individualization.
That's correct.
And in this case, you can't say who else might be excluded as being the contributor of this particular latent print.
I would have to do additional comparisons with those persons to make those determinations.
You can't offer some statistical number as to how many other folks in the world might have these same ridge patterns.
No statistical types of examinations were conducted in this case.
You talked a bit on direct examination about distortion and how distortion can sometimes mislead some examiners to interpret a particular characteristic as a physical characteristic when it's really a distortion or some other mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that correctly?
Pretty close.
Okay. And you talked about how there's pressures and different pressures in the way that the print is laid down and so forth.
Yes.
But you also said that no fingerprint is ever laid down in the same manner. Is that right?
That's correct.
Because we never lay our finger down in exactly the same manner.
Right.
And the conditions upon which we put our fingers on things are always going to be different.
That's true too.
And all of these different factors result in the reality that fingerprints are always going to look a little bit different. Is that true?
That's true.
But that doesn't preclude you from making identifications in your field of fingerprint analysis.
That is true.
Because these distortions and these inherent physical differences are always involved in your analysis.
That's true.
Okay. And in this case, we don't have any diagrams or marked up pictures or anything like that that you used in 2006 to document your analysis and comparison of the known print to the latent print, do we?
I did not make such graphic representations, no.
And just to clarify, the term you used was inconclusive, and that was your term you gave it in 2006, correct?
That's correct.
And that was an accepted term to describe a fingerprint comparison in 2006.
For my consultancy, yes, it was.
I don't have any other questions, Ron.
Anything else, Ms. Sept?
Mr. Wertheim, do you have any idea what the accepted terminology was in the labs in Washington State at that time?
I do not know the specific policies or procedures that were in place in Washington State at that time.
Now, I just want to clarify, you said this is not identifiable, and that means no match, right?
It's not a match or an exclusion.
Okay.
I was unable to make that determination.
Okay, you did see similarities between the defendant's print and this one?
I did.
Okay. And the defendant's lawyer asked you about the fact that we never lay down fingerprints in the same manner, so there's always some distortion, but not all fingerprints are so distorted that there can't be a finding of a match or an exclusion, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And a distortion could be on the photo or the print itself?
It could, yeah. We're taught to take into account different types of distortion when we conduct regular latent print examination work. So examiners are taught the limits of how the skin will flex, for example, or stretch. And within tolerance is a term that examiners use to describe their comparisons between a latent print and known prints, is that some distortion is present within a particular tolerance level, and therefore I'm able to make an identification.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing else.
I don't have any other questions, Your
You
Honor.
may step down here.
Thank you.
Next witness.
State will call Chris Johnson.
Raise your right hand.
Swear from your testimony in this matter to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please see.
Yes, my name is Chris Johnson, or my full first name is Christopher, and CHRISTOPHER, and JOHNSON.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a detective employed by King County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with King County Sheriff's Office?
Just about 20 years.
What are your duties currently?
I'm currently working as a detective in the Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit.
And what does that mean?
I do follow-up investigation on crimes such as assault, kidnapping, robbery, homicide.
In 2006, were you assigned to the major? Where were you assigned at that time?
At that time, I was assigned to the county's fraud and computer forensics unit.
Okay. On occasion, did you get called by the major crimes unit to assist in their investigations?
Yes.
Okay. In what capacity?
Usually, it was in the capacity of if there were electronics, like a computer or cell phones or things like that. If those items needed to be collected at a scene, they would call us to assist with the collection and later examination of such an item.
Did you also photograph places that were being searched?
Yes.
Did you take part in the search of a condominium in Linwood on February 8th, 2006?
Yes.
And do you recall the address offhand?
I do not have
Okay.
it memorized.
See if this sounds right. 15415 35 Avenue West, number C106.
Yes.
That sounds accurate to you? And as part of your involvement, did you take photographs during the search?
Yes, I did.
59.
Detective, I'm going to hand you what's been marked State's Exhibit 59. Could you take a look through that, see if you recognize the photographs in it?
Okay,
Do you recognize those?
yes.
How do you recognize them?
These are photographs showing the address that you just read off to me, which I confirmed was the same address I went to help on the search warrant at.
And did you take those photos?
I believe I did.
Okay. I'd offer 59.
I'm sorry, 59?
59.
No objection.
Admitted.
Okay, Detective, I'm going to show you the photo that's been marked A. It's rather dark. Would you mind? Thank you. What does this photo show?
This is a photograph of one of the bedrooms at the residence that we've been talking about.
And to your recollection, is that the master bedroom?
I would recall it as a master bedroom. There were two bedrooms, and the other one did not appear to be used just as a bedroom.
Okay. And we've earlier had photographs submitted of a bathroom that was connected to the bedroom. Can you tell me where to point on A, where that would be relative?
Yes. So if you're looking at this photograph, you walk in the bedroom and straight back to the left, and that would take you into the attached bathroom.
Okay. Okay, and photograph B, what does that show?
This is a photograph of the same bedroom that we just saw another photograph of, and this is just a different perspective.
So that's looking to the right.
As you walk in the door, it's looking to the right, and you can see the window there, and then the head of the bed is kind of out of view. It's to the very left of the screen.
Okay, so flipping back, that's the bed with the head of it
Yes.
on A. And on C, what does that depict?
That shows the living room of the residence we're talking about.
Do you recognize the gentleman sitting in the chair on the bottom right?
Yes.
Who is that?
I don't recall his name, but I remember speaking to him, and he identified himself to me as Mr. Pietz's half-brother, I believe.
Did he stay during the search of the condo?
Yes.
And what did he do during the search?
He sat there.
On the wall, can you tell us what we're looking at, that he's looking at?
Yes, that is a flat-screen television with components below it.
And what type of components are they?
I believe I recall their sound enhancement, like speakers, subwoofer, like I guess now you call it a sound bar, but back in 2006, I don't know what they called it. Stereo, home TV stereo system.
I have nothing else, thank you.
Ray Cross?
Yes, very briefly. Detective, you said that this search was February 8, 2006.
I know it was February 2006, but I'd have to look at my follow-up report to make sure that the day was accurate.
Do you have a copy of the follow-up report with you?
I brought a copy that I printed off before coming here.
Okay, why don't you take a look at that and see if you can ascertain the date of the search of the... Yes, I have no objection, Your Honor.
And I may take a look at this.
You may.
I have no objection.
Okay, I reviewed it.
And it's February 8th, the date.
Yes.
And were you involved in the search 2 days before of Mr. Pietz's condo?
No,
on
I was
February
not.
6th. At the time you did this search on February 8th, were you aware that Mr. Pietz gave consent to have his condo searched 2 days previously?
I do not recall that.
Okay. Did you take any photographs in the bathroom of the Pietz condo?
I do not recall doing that.
Okay, let me ask you this. Were you the one taking photographs?
I took some photographs, and I do recall that I handed my camera to then, he's now a captain, but then Detective Anderson.
Were you doing a photographic log at the time you were taking photographs?
No,
Do you know if Detective Anderson was?
I do not.
You know what a photographic log is, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And that's, it can be a sheet of paper, it can be a form, but with each photograph, you put down some information about it so you can refer back to it later.
Yes.
Okay. Would you please mark these as a defense exhibit?
One exhibit?
Probably separate. There's three, Your Honor. I could actually have it marked as one and then A, B, and C like the state's doing if there's no objection. Yes, that would be fine.
Would you like to label it A, B, C?
Yes, please.
Defendant's Exhibit 60, sub A, B, and C has been
May I approach the witness? Detective, I'm going to hand you what's been marked Exhibit A, B, and C, and have you take a look at that and see if that shows anything that you might recall during the search.
I do not recall these photographs.
Okay, and you don't recall what's shown in the photograph, seeing it out at the scene on February 8th?
No.
Okay. You can just set that aside.
Are you good with those in the pen?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Your Honor.
Just the ones you said to set aside.
Okay.
Oh, just so, one more point. When you went out to search on February 8th, you said a person who you thought was identified as David's half-brother was out there, and he's shown in one of the photographs?
Correct.
I take it David Pietz wasn't there at the time?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Anything else in the state?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do, Your Honor. 59, State.
State's Exhibit 56, which was seller testified to this morning.
Any objection to 56? Any objection to 56? That's the other door handle.
No objection.
Thank you.
Does anybody intend to offer 58, which is the 35 millimeter proof sheet?
State doesn't.
No?
Your Honor, I would offer it. I think she testified as to his authenticity, what it was.
You want it? You have it. I just didn't know if somebody was just passing by. It was not.
I would offer it, Your
All
Honor.
right. Exhibit 58 submitted. That's correct. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that your testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Have a seat.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you state your name and spell both your first and last names, if you would?
Stacy Smalls, S-T-A-C-Y, S-M-A-L-L-S.
And Ms. Smalls, how are you employed?
I'm a loss prevention investigator with Safeway stores.
What does that mean?
I deal with external theft, fraud, internal theft, fraud, all sorts of stuff.
Do you do that job for a lot of different stores, for the corporation in general?
Yes, I've had several districts.
And how long have you held that position?
13 years?
And is that the only position you've held with Safeway?
Yes.
As part of that job, are you familiar with the video camera systems that exist in the Safeway stores?
Yes.
I want to talk for a moment about 2006. Was the video system different then than it might be now in a Safeway store?
Yes.
Can you explain how that is?
In 2006, we were still using VHS tapes and VCRs. We would have 5 VCRs perhaps, depending on how many cameras per store. Today we use a digital system with DVRs. It's one DVR, and it's all set to, when you download video, it goes to a disc or a flash drive instead of to VHS tapes.
Okay. I want to move away from the video for a second and ask you another question. Again, back in 2006, do you recall receiving a request from the King County Sheriff's Office or even the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office to assist in finding a certain receipt from one of your Safeway stores?
I do.
And were you the correct person to contact for that type of request?
Yes, it was my district. The store was in my district.
Which store was it that was being asked about?
It was the Safeway located at 148th and Highway 99 in Linwood, Washington.
148th and Highway 99?
Correct.
Okay. And what was asked of you specifically, if you recall?
The detective asked me to see if I could locate a transaction that occurred. He gave me a list of the items that he believed was on the transaction.
Were you given a date or just items?
I believe a date too.
Do you recall any of the items that you were told might be in this particular transaction?
Drano and gloves. That's what I recall at the time. That's what my search was for.
And how did you go about attempting to locate this particular receipt?
We have what's called electronic journal, and I can access it and pull it up, and I can search by the time, by the store number, by the transaction number. In this case, it was searched by the item number of the Drano.
And by item number, what does that mean
The
exactly?
SKU number, the number that when it's scanned would show up on the journal.
That's on the little black bars
Correct.
or lines?
Correct.
Okay. And is the same SKU number applied to every thing of Drano? Or?
No.
Okay, so how do you know, did you search out a particular SKU number or just Drano?
The first search was just Drano, and we couldn't locate it. And then I was told, I don't remember if it was the detectives who exactly told me, but to search by Drano Max. It was a different type of Drano, and that's when I located the transaction in question.
And you were able to locate one that fit the date and approximate time you'd been given by the detectives?
Yes,
And did you then provide that to detectives?
I did.
I'm going to show you.
Yes, sir. State's Exhibit 61 has been...
Thank you. I'm going to show you, Ms. Smalls, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 61 and ask if you recognize this.
I do.
And what is that?
This is a copy of the receipt from a purchase from January 27th, 2006 at 3523 store, which is the store on Linwood on 199, or 99 and 148th Street.
And I'm sorry, could you give the store number again?
3523?
And is that the receipt that you located for the detectives?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would offer Exhibit 61.
No objection.
Move.
And if you would, can you just indicate specifically what is the date and time on that receipt there?
January 27th, 2006, 2347, so 1147.
And from your understanding of receipts and transactions at Safeway, what does that time refer to?
This is the time that the transaction ended.
And what makes a timestamp? How is that get recorded on a receipt? Is it from the cash register? Or
From
is
the,
it
from the cash register, yes, the terminal.
So every time a purchase is made, the receipt will print the time that it's completed.
Any type of transaction, correct.
And that receipt also indicates that it was store number 3523?
Correct.
And can you just list specifically the items that are on that receipt?
Drano clog remover, Safeway gloves, Sparks malt beverage, and Mike's lemon cranberry.
And what types of items are those, if you know?
The Sparks malt and Mike's lemonade are alcoholic beverages. The Drano and Safeway gloves, I'm guessing were rubber gloves, perhaps.
And what was the total amount on that transaction?
Including tax, it was $13.58.
Any way to tell from that receipt if it was a cash transaction versus some type of card?
Yes, it says cash, $20 was tendered and $6.42 was given back in change.
Thank you, I'll take that back from you. Were you also asked by detectives, and I should ask you, was this the Nicole Pietz case? Were you familiar with what they were asking you about?
I was, very much.
Were you also asked by detectives investigating the Nicole Pietz case to get video or provide video from this same store at the time of this transaction?
I was.
And did you assist in doing that?
Yes, I did.
And I had asked you earlier, I'm assuming then it was the VHS type tape that you would have provided?
Yes.
Back in 2006, January, at the time this transaction happened, I guess we'll focus on this particular store. Were there multiple cameras in that store?
Yes.
Approximately how many do you think they had?
I think that store had like 5 VCRs, probably 48 cameras, give or take.
And was each VCR set to a different clock? In other words, did they all have their own clocks?
Correct, yes.
And how would the clocks be set?
We would do it manually if they were just unplugged or for some power outage. I'd have to go in and program the time on the VCRs. Power outages sometimes created problems, that kind of stuff, so sometimes they had to be redone.
Did you ever have difficulty with the clocks on the VCRs staying on the correct time?
Yes, on occasion some of them would gain time. Some of them would be right on, pretty close.
Was it also possible that not all of the 5 clocks on the 5 VCRs would be on the same time?
Very much so.
Okay. So you pulled video, and did you actually provide it to the detectives?
I did.
State's Exhibit 62 is
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 62. First of all, do you recognize what this item is?
Yes.
And how do you know what that is?
This is a CD that you showed me earlier today that was transferred from the VHS tapes that I gave the detectives, and I put my initials and dated it.
And when you viewed that, even though that's obviously in CD format, did that appear to be the video that you had provided back in 2006 on this case?
Yes, it was.
And do you recall right now how many camera views are provided on that video?
I believe 2, maybe 3, actually 3.
Were they inside or outside the store?
1 I believe is outside and 1 or 2 are inside.
And do you know now, and it's okay if you don't, whether the cameras that are shown on this video operated from the same VCR or different VCR?
I don't know. They probably, I have no idea. I don't know if they were the same or not.
On the video that you viewed in my office, did you see a purchase being made by someone wearing a sort of reddish shirt?
Yes.
And do you recall if the time on the video matched the time that's on the receipt here that you just testified to, Exhibit 61?
No. The video was fast on the time, the purchase from Electronic Journal, which would be a very accurate time on the register versus the video.
That was my next question.
I'm sorry.
Are the registers accurate?
Very accurate, yes.
So if one had to depend on either the video clock versus the register clock, which one would it be?
The register.
Okay. I'm going to offer Exhibit 62, the video at this time.
No objection.
Admitted.
Thank you, Ms. Smalls. I don't have any other questions right now. Council may have some questions for you.
Ms. Smalls, just to clarify, the Mike's Hard Lemonade that was purchased, that's reflected on the receipt, that's just a single bottle of Mike's Hard Lemonade?
Correct.
And also with respect to the Sparks malt beverage, that was just a single product as
Correct.
well?
Correct.
May I approach the witness? Ms. Smalls, I'm handing you what has been marked for identification purposes as Defendant's Exhibit 60, and it's 60B. Do you recognize that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Drano Max product that is sold in Safeway stores?
I'm familiar that we carry it. That recognize that. I buy myself. I buy this too.
Okay. Is there a bottle depicted in Defendant's Exhibit 60B, which is a picture?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Does that look like the Drano Max that Safeway sells?
Very much. Could be, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I don't. It's been a while.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Nothing else? You may step down if you would witness can be excused. Who's your next witness?
Your Honor, Detective Crenshaw, and we are going to show that video. Would you like to take our break now before we put him on? We've got other things for him as well, but it's 2:40, so I didn't know if the court wants to break.
I'm going to ask the court order what her pleasure is. Whatever I say, perfect answer.
It's fine either way. Leave your notepads on your chair.
I get that answer very ready. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm your testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Be seated.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Can you state both your first and last name, and please spell them both?
My first name is Raphael, R-A-P-H-A-E-L, and last name Crenshaw, C-R-E-N-S-H-A-W.
Who do you work for?
The King County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with King County?
23 years and change.
Any law enforcement prior to King County Sheriff's?
No.
What are your current duties with King County?
I am a sergeant assigned to the Southwest Precinct.
And how long have you been a sergeant there?
3 years and something.
What were you doing with King County in January, February 2006 time period?
I was a detective assigned to the Major Crimes Unit.
And Sergeant Crenshaw, did you assist or were you asked to assist at some point in the Nicole Pietz homicide investigation?
Yes.
I want to ask about a few different areas that you worked on. And the first is, did you get tasked at some point with tracking down a receipt from a Safeway store?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that?
To verify some information that we'd had to establish a timeline.
And was this information you received from the defendant, David Pietz, about a purchase he had made?
Not me directly, but yes.
Information that had been given to other detectives?
Correct.
And did you in fact, or were you unable to get the receipt from Safeway that you were looking for?
Yes.
And do you recall what that was for, the purchases?
Some Drano, some rubber gloves, some type of alcoholic beverage.
I'm going to show you it's admitted as Exhibit 61. Is that the receipt that you tracked down?
Yes.
And what's the date on that? What was the purchase from?
The date was the 27th of January 2007, or 2006.
Do you recall what day of the week that was in relation to the investigation?
No, I'm sorry.
show you what's been admitted previously as Exhibit 2, calendar of January 2006. So looking at that, what day was that purchase made?
On a Friday.
Okay, Friday evening.
Yes.
And Detective, did you also at some point obtain video footage surrounding that purchase at Safeway?
Yes.
And did you view that video when you received it?
Yes.
Do you recall just generally what that showed?
It was the video from the Safeway store in the Linwood area, and so there were a couple of different camera views, one from inside the store and I believe one from outside the store, and so it showed customers coming in and out of the store.
And did it show the defendant making that purchase?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 62. Have you actually seen that video, and is that the video we're talking about?
Yes. Yes, I have.
And does that contain video of the defendant that night making that purchase?
Yes, it does.
Eric, is somebody asked to publish this to the jury?
What you really need is he wants to play.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Sergeant Crenshaw, if you could, I'm going to turn this on, and if you need to step down, feel free, but I'm going to ask you to just kind of say what we're seeing on this video once it comes up here.
All right.
So keep it paused if you would for a moment. Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you step over here? Is this the Safeway store you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and push play if you would, Detective.
So,
I need to see as well, so do you guys want to move over there maybe so I can stand?
Or if you could move the thing, the TV back up further so I can read feel. That'd probably work.
Okay. First of all, what time is reflected on this portion of the video we're looking at here?
the time according to this is just after midnight, the morning of the 28th, which would be Saturday morning.
And are you aware of whether the video cameras in this store are completely accurate as to the real time of day?
They are not.
Okay. Go ahead and play it if you would, Detective.
All right, so this is a video from the inside of the Safeway store, and there's a gentleman here at the register, which is not the defendant, but the defendant comes up to the same register in a red shirt, which I believe you could see him.
Keep going.
And so all this will show is the transaction. There he is right here with
Go
the
ahead,
red shirt
pause it.
on. The red shirt at the register now.
Okay.
And then
So is this when he's leaving the store?
making the purchase and then leaving, yes.
Is this video in order, I should ask? Or is it sort of out of order in the way
It's out of
copied?
order, I guess. We were given this VHS tape originally in different segments, and so one camera just showed the front door, one was the register, and so it's kind of broken into pieces here. But this is the purchase, and then later on we'll see him coming into the store and then also leaving. All right, still in the store at the register. So in a few seconds here, he'll eventually even go out the front door.
So the clock right now is showing approximately 12:07.
Correct. In the morning. And there he goes. He's walking out now with a grocery bag in his hand.
Can you pause it for a second? So it looks like it just switched over. What time is the clock now reflecting?
It's 11:57 p.m. The evening of the 27th.
So this actually would have happened earlier in time than the footage we just saw.
Correct.
Okay, so go ahead and press play if you would, Detective. And what are we going to see here then?
Him coming into the store. Right here, he's walking in, red shirt with name tag, white name tag.
So at 23:57.
Correct. And so you could see that he left out here and came in here, but it's the same general area.
All right, can you pause it, Detective? So now what are we seeing?
This is the entrance exit from the Safeway store.
And what time's reflected right here?
11:57 p.m.
Okay. And what are we about to see here? Go ahead and press
It's either him leaving or him walking in.
Okay. Can you pause it?
Coming in.
Thank you. Okay.
So this is him here walking into the store with the red shirt with the white name tag.
Okay. So this is him walking in at 23:57. Go ahead and hit play.
That's it.
Okay, pause it if you would. The next segment, what time are we at now?
7:37 in the morning. I'm sorry. 12:07 in the morning.
Okay, and what are we seeing here?
That's him leaving the store.
Okay, so 12:07:37 is leaving.
Yes.
Okay, so do you recall the times on the camera that were showing when he first walked in from the internal camera and when he walked out? How many minutes apart that was that he spent in the store then?
About 10 minutes, give or take.
You can hit play, please. And did he have a bag in his hand?
He did.
And is that essentially the end?
Yes.
Thank you. You can proceed again. You can hit the light back up. Thank you. And again, you referenced this, but you were just trying to verify information that you or other detectives had received from the defendant?
Yes.
Now, I want to direct you now to a different time period. Did you respond when Nicole Pietz's Jetta was found in the area of the University District?
I did.
Do you recall what day that was without looking at a report? Let me mark your report.
February 15th-ish.
Let me mark it.
Okay. I don't remember the exact date.
I'm going to show you what we marked. This case is at 63, and after that's your report in this case, Sergeant.
Yes, it is.
And I'm going to have you direct your attention to, let's see, let me find the page. Looks like page 12 of your report.
It was the 22nd
Okay.
of February. I'm sorry.
So February 22nd is when you responded relating to the Jetta?
Correct.
Okay. And I want to ask specifically about something that day. Did you speak to an individual named Michael Rogers on that day?
I did.
And what time did you have a conversation with Mr. Rogers?
About 1 p.m.
And did you receive information from him about having tagged that vehicle at some point?
Yes.
Did he also tell you whether he knew how long the car had been there prior to him tagging it?
He was uncertain of how long it was there prior to him tagging it.
Detective, or now Sergeant, did you make any efforts surrounding that recovery of the car to contact cab companies?
I did.
What was the purpose of that?
To attempt to determine whether or not the person that left the car got on the cab to leave the area.
So what specifically were you asking cab companies, if you recall?
Any pickups that they had in the area of where the Jetta was found.
And were you asking for any particular date?
I believe so, which would have been, I can't remember the parameters that I gave them originally, but I believe it was around the time of her disappearance.
Okay. So around the time period that she had last been seen?
Correct.
And what cab companies did you specifically contact?
Northwest, Orange, Yellow, and Far West, maybe? Not sure if that's correct or not.
And were you asking them about whether they picked somebody up during a certain time period in terms of hours, or how were you
Just any
knowing?
pickups they had that day.
And do you know if that day was the 28th or what day you were talking
The
about?
28th, I believe, yes.
January 28th?
Correct, 2006.
And were you asking about nighttime, daytime, or do you recall?
Just any time.
Okay. And were you asking about any pickups or any pickups that were taken to a certain location?
We were interested potentially, I guess, in any pickups from that area where the car was found and maybe dropped off in the Linwood area.
And from those 4 companies that you contacted, did you receive any information about any potential pickups in that area during that day?
I did not.
At some point, Sergeant Crenshaw, did you yourself collect and package some pill bottles in relation to this case?
I did.
Do you recall how you got those items, where they came from?
I do.
Stacy said that 64 is the
And did these come from belongings of Ms. Pietz or the defendant, or do you recall?
Miss Pietz.
When did you receive belongings from Ms. Pietz?
I got them from her mother, and I'd have to look at my follow-up for the exact date. I don't recall.
Go ahead and you can find out if I can direct you. I'll direct you to around February 8th of 2007, Sergeant. It'd be page 19.
Yes.
So is that correct date, February 8th of 2007?
Yes.
How many items or boxes of items did you get from Ms. Pietz's mother?
7 boxes.
And did you go through those boxes?
I did.
And did you recover some pill bottles in those boxes?
I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 64. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
What does that appear to be?
This contains the prescription pill bottles that I recovered that day.
And did you actually package them as well?
Yes.
And I'm going to offer at this time Exhibit 64.
No objections.
I'll have you open it up. Go ahead and take out one of them, I guess. Or there's more than one bottle in there?
There's 2.
Okay, why don't you take out one of them first and we'll identify them. What is that bottle that you have there?
Oh boy, this will be tricky. Gabapentin.
Okay. Can you spell that if you would?
Gabapentin.
And is there a date on that bottle as to when it might have been filled?
Yes. The 9th of January 2006.
And was it filled at a particular pharmacy?
Rite Aid in Bothell.
And who was it filled for? What's the name of the person on there?
Nicole Pietz.
Does it indicate how many pills it was filled for?
Says 90.
And is there a directions for how the prescription should be taken on that bottle as well?
Yes. Would I read it?
Yes,
Okay.
please do, thank you.
It says take 1 capsule by mouth once daily at bedtime for 3 days, then increase to 2 capsules at bedtime for 3 days, then increase to 3 at bedtime, 3 capsules at bedtime.
Okay, so 1 a day first,
For the first 3 days.
and then 2 a day for the first 3 days?
Yes.
And then 3 a day?
Yes.
And it's always at bedtime, it says?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sergeant. Can you take out the second bottle, and I'll take this one for a second. Just hold it up. So can you first provide for me the name of the medication that the second bottle is?
Asacol. And it's ASACOL.
Okay. And what was the date that was filled?
December 12th, 2005.
And was that also the Rite Aid pharmacy?
Yes.
And was that a prescription for Nicole Pietz?
Yes.
How many pills were in that bottle when it was filled?
Well, it says 2 of 2, and it says quantity 336 of 360.
Okay. And do you yourself know what that means?
No.
Okay. Does that indicate what the directions are for taking that prescription?
It does. It says take 4 tablets by mouth 3 times a day.
And did you package these right after you had taken them from the boxes of belongings?
Yes.
And you already cut open the packaging. Did you seal it initially when you packaged it?
Well, it's an envelope in an envelope, but let's see. I could look in the other envelope.
Yeah, you can look at whatever you need to look at.
It's got my initials on here for the evidence item number. And then my handwriting on what appears to be, let's see here, maybe the initial envelope.
So the envelope that you have in your hand now, was that maybe the original packaging?
I believe so, yes.
Does it appear that that's maybe been opened by other detectives with your agency since you did the packaging?
Yes, Detective Pavlovich, it appears, it had also opened it.
And is that not uncommon?
The bag in the bag.
Is that the bag that you originally put in also?
Yes,
So it's been repackaged since you did it,
a couple of times, yes.
but it appears to be owned by detectives from your agency?
Yes. Let's see, this one goes in there. Put those in first.
Thank you. I'll take these back. Was the majority of the items in those boxes you got clothing, to your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. And Detective or Sergeant, I want to refer you to some of the other evidence items in this case. Did you have anything to do with either sending or receiving items that had been sent for vacuum metal processing?
Yes.
And what did you have to do with that?
As the case detective, I received the items or shipped the items.
And we've heard some testimony already. Just briefly, vacuum metal processing is a type of fingerprinting work that can be done?
Yes.
And why were those sent to have that done with them?
It was just additional fingerprint processing of those items.
Do you know, or did you record in your follow-up what items were sent for vacuum metal processing?
I did, although I could probably just give you the evidence item numbers and not necessarily what they were.
Okay. Do you have, directing your attention to page 21 of your report, did you list the items that were sent for vacuum metal processing?
Yes, it was AAM 58, 62, 76, 77, and 93 to 97.
If I show you a master evidence list, would that help you to know what items are actually associated with those numbers?
Yes.
Can I have this chart, please?
Stacy to the 65.
I'm going to show you some pages here, and these appear to be lists of evidence items in this case.
Yes, it does.
And I don't know that includes everything. Does that include some of the items that you sent for vacuum metal processing?
Yes.
Can you just tell us what items got sent for that purpose?
Yes, they're all there. So AAM 58 is a plastic bottle holder.
And were those items, was that from the car?
Yes.
Okay.
And then 62 would be 2 water bottles. 76 is a door handle from the Volkswagen interior,
Which door handle does it say?
driver's side. Then 77 would be door handle, interior, rear passenger door.
Does that also say driver's side on that list?
For 77, it says interior, rear passenger door. Driver's side, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then 93 to 97. Would be 93 is driver's seat or a portion of the driver's seat. 94 is also driver's seat, the back portion of the driver's seat. 95 is the gear shift knob. 96 is the seat belt, and 97 is the height adjuster clip.
Thank you. And were there any new latent prints in the discovered or ascertained from the vacuum metal processing?
No.
Thank you, Sergeant. I don't have any other questions for you right now.
Sergeant Crenshaw, your entire investigation with respect to the Safeway video and the items from Safeway, that was all based upon information that Mr. Pietz had provided to the other detectives during his police interview, correct?
Yes.
This wasn't a situation where you found a receipt or something in the condo and then you kind of followed up on your own.
That is correct.
This was all based on information he provided.
Yes.
And because he had provided this information, you knew the specific Safeway location to go to. Is that true?
I believe so, yes.
And you knew what time frame to look at.
Yes.
And you knew what specific products to look at.
Yes.
The products were Drano and Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Correct.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
You may step down. Counsel, anybody want to recall this witness? No?
Thank you. Now, State Police Detective Tim Doe.
Come forward, please. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm your testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? I do. You see.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name and spell your first and last, please?
My name is Tien Do, spelled Thien. Last name is Do, D-O.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed as a detective with the King County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with King County?
I started my career in 1995.
19 what?
1995.
Any law enforcement prior to King County?
I was a seasonal park ranger for the Federal Park Service in 1993 and 1994.
And what are your current duties with King County?
I'm currently assigned to the Major Crimes Unit, and my areas of responsibility is to investigate death investigations, robberies, and felony assaults.
And were you in that same unit back in, were you in that same unit back in 2006?
Yes.
And have you been in that unit since 2006?
Yes.
Did you get asked to assist with the Nicole Pietz homicide investigation in 2011?
Yes.
Did you assist in a task involving Nicole Pietz's VW Jetta?
Yes.
What were you asked to do, or what did you do?
I was asked to sort of reassemble the car back to its position when it was first found. When I say reassemble the car, because I understood that some of the seats and steering wheel had been removed for examination, and so my job was to put it back together.
And where was the car at that time?
The car was stored at Lake Young's, which is our storage facility for vehicles.
And specifically, when was it in 2011 that you did this?
At the top of my head, I want to say sometime in June.
Did you do a report about that?
I did.
Detective, I'm showing you Exhibit 66. Is this your report regarding what you're testifying to right now?
It is.
And can you look at that and see if it refreshes your recollection as to the date that we're talking about?
It does.
What date was it?
June 13, 2011.
Did you do the work at the facility where the car was being stored?
No, we had the car moved from Lake Young's to a warehouse facility that we also had for vehicles. It was more covered storage. The warehouse had better working conditions.
And when you say that there were parts of the car that had been removed, was the majority of the car, the body of the car, still intact in the facility at Lake Young's?
Yes.
What do you recall? Is it just the steering wheel and seats that needed to be put back in?
I believe it was the steering wheel and the two front seats, the driver's and passenger seats.
Why is it that you were trying to put the car back the way it was when it was first recovered?
The question that was posed to me was that based on the car's seat position, was this car suitable for somebody of Nicole's stature and height to be driving it, or is it David Pietz's height and stature?
So you needed to put the seats back where they'd been?
Yes.
Now, first of all, I'm assuming you didn't tow it yourself from Lake Young's.
That is correct.
Who did that?
I can't remember the tow facility.
Is it a facility that your agency uses sometimes for this kind of thing?
Yes.
Did you have assistance from anybody else to actually put the seats and steering wheel and that kind of thing back in?
Yes, I worked with Detective Maloney and I believe Detective Wells, and we had hired a mechanic to actually put the pieces back together.
And Detective Maloney and Detective Wells are from what unit of your department?
They're from our MAR unit, which is the Major Accident Response and Reconstruction.
And what was the purpose of having them there?
Detective Maloney is the one that actually took the measurements of the seat position in the car, and so we were going to work off his measurements.
So when you brought the car back, you said the mechanic helped put the actual pieces back in?
That is correct.
And then did Detective Maloney ensure that the seat was in the same position as it had been when the car was recovered?
Yes.
And then what else happened? What else would you do at that point to try to answer the question that you posed?
To try to answer the question, we had to have two models that closely resembles Nicole and David Pietz's height and stature. So my job was to try to find these two models to sit in the car and see which is more suitable for their height and stature.
What was your understanding of the heights that you needed to try to find models who would match?
I believe Nicole was 5'4", 120 pounds.
And how about David Pietz?
David Pietz was 6 feet, 180 pounds.
And were you able to find individuals who somewhat approximated those heights or weights?
I did.
And who was that?
Detective Melissa Rogers was going to be our model for Nicole Pietz's height and stature, and Detective Casey Johnson was selected to be David Pietz's height and stature.
And was that based on their heights and weights as well?
That's correct.
And then what were they going to do in relation to the car? What was the purpose of having them there?
Once the car was assembled to Detective Maloney's specifications, we were going to have them sit in the car and photograph it to document how it is that they sat in the car and if it was comfortable for them to drive in the car in that position.
And were photographs taken of each of them in the vehicle?
Yes.
Were there photographs taken as well of where their feet fell in the vehicle when they were sitting in it?
Yes.
I'm going to show you some photographs.
Stacy to 67.
These are photographs that were taken that day that you did this car seat project.
Yes, they are.
And do those fairly and accurately represent how it looked that day when you did this?
Yes.
I would offer 67.
May I have word here?
You may.
Detective, the location of the seats were dependent upon where Detective Maloney placed them. Is that right?
That is correct.
And Detective Maloney is the person, I take it, that supposedly had the information as to where the seats were at the time that the car was located?
That's correct.
And in between the car being located, I believe on February 22nd, and the date of your photographs in June, was it June 2006 when you took the photographs?
These photographs?
Yeah.
No, this is June 2011.
2011, the seats had been taken out of the car.
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would object. I don't think we have foundation for this without having the underlying testimony from the detective who made the measurements or who made the determination of where the seats were located.
Let me ask a few more questions, Your Honor, and then let's revisit that if I could. Foundational questions of the detective.
You may. I think if he's getting information from somebody else, you might run into a hearsay objection.
Yeah, let me just find out. Detective Doe, were you aware that when the car was first recovered, it had been measured by the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware that measurements had been done also by the MAR unit?
Yes.
And were you relying on those at the time you did this car recreation?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would ask that we be able to admit these photographs. We can do it conditionally relevant if we need to bring in Detective Maloney, but scheduling purposes, we had to do this detective now. We have one more brief witness.
Oh, you do? All right. I'm going to have the jury go back to the jury room for a moment. Have a seat.
Your Honor, I misspoke. It's actually Detective McNabb who did the measurements the second time. It was Kim Betty
You
and
can sit.
Detective
Oh,
McNabb.
right. So just
So we need to recall Detective McNabb to say that.
well, what I'm looking for in my notes is it's my recollection, although not a crystal clear recollection, that we've already had testimony concerning the measurements.
I don't recall that. Maybe Mr. Offenbecker could answer that.
Kim Betty testified to the measurements of the car on the car recovery.
Well, I remember specifically someone testifying to the seat position,
Yes.
the seat position from the floor up to the center of the seat. Now, I've got a lot of notes here, and hold on.
I stand corrected if that's the case.
It was Kim Betty, Your Honor, which was on today.
So what I'm suggesting is that the testimony is already in And if those are the measurements he relied upon to place these people in the seats, then the foundation is already laid. And I apologize, I can't find specific reference in my notes, but I do have a recollection that there was testimony in that regard, because he was obviously testifying about the same thing as to whether the configuration of the seat would match a person's stature.
Your Honor, I just found in my notes that Ms. Duddy testified with regard to Exhibit 50, and she gave some distances. I guess the question, though, is that...
Did he rely on those distances?
Or was it Detective Maloney that relied? I guess that's the question.
Well, the question is what distance he was operating off of. And he's operating off the distances for which we've already had testimony. Then all he's doing is positioning them where the jury's already been told they were seated and taking photographs.
May I voir dire on that, Your Honor?
You certainly may.
May I just, before you do, Mr. Allen, we're also offering photographs that were taken from the initial video when the car was recovered, compared to photographs of the seat positions at this recreation. By naked eye, you can tell it's in the same position, so I think it also...
Why do you need these?
Huh? So, I mean, I think at that point it goes to weight, but if he wants to voir dire...
It goes to foundation. He set it up according to information that was given to him. That information was given to him from someone who is yet to testify. It's hearsay. If, however, the information has already been testified to, and that's the information used for his photography session, then it's admitted. I just don't know, and you may voir dire.
Thank you. Detective, who set up the seat? Was it you or Detective Maloney?
Detective Maloney and the mechanic did.
Okay, you didn't set it up, right?
I did not.
Okay.
Did you, since you didn't set it up, can you verify whether the, I've got, right here, whether the seat position, did you measure the seat positions?
I did not, Your Honor.
So all you can say is somebody else put them in the seat, they told you that's about where they were seated, and you took the photos.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Objection sustained for now. It was Kim Duddy who testified. She testified concerning the firewall, the brake, and the accelerator, and gave 24, 19 and a half, and 23 inches.
We didn't know we needed to elicit from McNabb, because essentially Detective McNabb observed Maloney make measurements, and then that's what was relied upon at the recreation.
I thought Duddy made
Right,
the
he took the
measurements.
measurements.
Who made the
McNabb took the
measurements? She
measurements.
testified to it.
Okay.
Now we're all talking at the same time.
We can recall McNabb and postpone all of this then. McNabb took the measurements at Lake Young's,
Well-
and that's what was relied upon at the car recreation. We didn't think we needed to call
Kim
McNabb. for that
Duddy
info.
testified to the measurements.
Right, and
Now, was she
McNabb-
testifying based on the measurements made by someone else?
No, Your Honor, Ms. Duddy took the measurements at the search at Lake Young's at a later date. Detective McNabb replaced the seats using her measurements. Detective Maloney then relayed those to Tim Doe, and that's how the seats were placed in the car for the recreation.
Well, that's not what Detective Doe said.
Well, that's what we're saying, that I guess we'd have to recall
Well,
McNabb, then we didn't know.
Counsel, can you figure it out?
Well, we have it figured out. McNabb is the person.
You got a missing link here?
Yes.
Yep, that's what we
If
just.
they want us to lay foundation with McNabb again,
No,
we'll do
that's
that.
what foundation is about, is supplying those missing
fine.
links.
So then I think we should adjourn then, because our next
You know,
witness.
if he can't testify that he set it up the way Kim Duddy testified the seat was configured, then you'll have to have somebody else do it. I will tell you that he's already testified that those are his photographs taken of the seat after it was moved. So I don't think he has to come back in and say again that the photographs are what they purport to be, which is people sitting there in the repositioned seat. So all we need now is to tie up where the seat was, and that doesn't require him to come back, unless you have some other questions of him on that issue.
There are two other photographs, Your Honor, that Detective Doe would have to authenticate that show the seat compared to the seat at the search. So we could do that now.
Well, you can have him identify photos, and he can say that he took photos of a seat position these two officers were in as that seat was configured by another officer. And you can bring in the other officer to say, I put that seat in the same place as it was related by Kim Duddy of the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab. Okay?
That's
All
fine.
right.
I mean,
Is that all right?
If we're not showing the photos today with the PowerPoint and the other photos, then we will recall Detective Doe. We're not going to do it without being able to present the pictures completely.
So you have any questions of him right now?
No, Your Honor, I think they said they're going to recall them, so.
They are.
Thank you.
So are we done for the day? Okay. I don't usually have my evidentiary rulings just end the whole thing for the day.
Well, I guess you're lucky.
All right, we'll be in recess until tomorrow morning. And you may step down, sir. What's that? Pass them back to the... And do you have a list for tomorrow's witnesses yet? Not yet. You'll email them to everyone tonight? Yes. Is that okay with you?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. They already took. We had this morning, the lunch break ended up being a big traffic jam out there. So maybe we ought to try to get him out of here before.
Oh, in the hallway.
And it was
Yes.
out in the, next to the elevators.
Yes.
There had to be 150 people waiting for elevators.
Huge.
So maybe in the future we'll have to get him out of here first. All right, we are in recess, Terry.